From the Republican Overseas Organisation over here in London, Erol Morkoç. Hi, Erol.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Now, are you in London?
No, I told you I had this car accident.
So you're
I've got
still there? Okay. So how are you doing? Seriously?
Actually, I'm doing a lot better. It was really bad, like in internal bruising on
Oh my
one side,
God.
and they said just don't get on a plane for 60 days. That was in
Oh my
January.
God.
I'm planning to come at the end of the month.
Well, you're stuck in California. There's worse places to be stuck.
That's true.
Let's talk about this, though. I think. Well, let's talk about the education department first. Elon's sending in these very young techies. Apparently, he sent a couple of 22-year-olds into the education department, and they're finding contracts left, right, and centre. I think they've literally found $821 million worth of contracts they don't think are worth spending a dime on. The workers in the education department are up in arms. They're outside demonstrating, save our civil service. Yeah, good luck with that. That'll get the public really worked up, won't it? Yeah, save our civil service. You hear people saying that all the time. What the Republicans are worried about, and I think we have a similar fear here, is that educators in America are left wing, and they're liberal, and they've basically been teaching American kids how to be left wing. In other words, they've been raising generations of future Democrat voters. So there's a fear about that, isn't there?
Oh, there's a huge fear, and it's a fear that's a generation like mine had to grow up with. Keep in mind, J.D. Vance, being a millennial, he went to K-12 public school just like myself. And we went through this whole experience where we saw the No Child Left Behind Act, which made the whole school go at the speed of the stupidest kid in class. That was how we started to operate the systems. The system started to become a slush fund for unqualified people. My fiance is an educator. I remembered listening to the teachers union call her and basically threaten her and tell her that the students are so bad and so dangerous that if you don't join the union, they're going to sue you. I mean, it was like listening to some sort of like unelected bureaucracy, which is what they are, and they've dumbed down the American student experience to the point where we're ranked last effectively in any quantifiable metric in public education. And these people are terrified, horrified, petrified of that slush fund being exposed and seeing what the money is really going to. We're spending in some cities $22,000 per student. That's 5 times the average you spend in Europe. If that money went to teachers, each teacher could take 10 kids and make 220 grand a year. The teachers make $40,000 a year, and they're not educating the teachers in specific subjects, by the way. They've created the discipline of education. So you give a guy who has a PhD in education, who's the principal. These are not qualified, competent people, and the result is in the student output. It's not me sitting here saying I had a bad personal experience. It's saying look at the de-evolution of the American public school system and look at the money spent. The money's going somewhere. Where is it going? Well, a lot of people are getting very, very rich, whether it be consultants who go through the revolving door of the Department of Education and then sell pamphlets to distribute into schools or sell textbooks back to the schools. The entire thing lacks any oversight whatsoever, and it's basically been a jobs program for unqualified people who all vote Democrat, who all donate Democrat. And if this is to come down and school choice is to become a thing, and the American student is going to have a chance in the 21st century, this institution needs to be obliterated. It's what Donald Trump ran on. It's what people like me have been saying since we were sitting in those classrooms saying this is what we're getting as an education. And so I think
even the kids recognize it. Even the kids recognize it. We've got the same thing going on here, but I think it's very interesting that only this week, what they call them the Muscovites or something. That he sends in these very young techno guys and women, of course. Apparently, a couple of 22-year-olds went into the education department, and in no time at all, cancelled 89 education department contracts worth $881 million, and they axed 29 diversity, equality and inclusion training grants, adding up to $101 million. My point, Errol, here is that, I'll bet you that was very justified. Saving money from Joe Biden's government, the remnants of his government, is quite an easy task, isn't it? This guy was spending money like water on ludicrous nonsense.
Oh, absolutely. And I think here's the thing that's really genius that Elon brought in young people who aren't beholden to any bureaucracy. He knows they're not corrupted because they were just in college. That one kid deciphered how to read those scrolls with AI technology. I mean, these kids are brilliant. So they're not encumbered by owing somebody something to get to their station. None of them owe anybody anything. So we have our top quality young minds in there discovering unlimited waste and abuse. And the DEI, especially, has been holding everybody back. You're taking people who aren't qualified and putting them in positions that they can't really keep. You're taking people who aren't qualified and putting them in positions where they're maybe holding others back. And you're also cheating people who do things the right way and who work hard. Now they're getting castigated as though they only got there because of some DEI policy, which isn't fair to them. And so when you look at all the waste that can be cut out in day one, just give them another month and wait till they start to see all the fraud and abuse that goes into the union, especially, and look at the revolving door and the money that's going to the individuals. Now we're catching the broad spectrum fraud, but where is the individual slush fund going? And I think that's where these young heroes, as I call them, are going to be, saving the American taxpayer more money than anybody ever on earth. These 4 or 5 young people will save us a fortune that we could reinvest into school choice, into actual education programs, into actually renovating some of the schools that are dilapidated, as opposed to hiring a new DEI coordinator for the school. Why don't we fix the plumbing? It's leaking water on the students. That's the reality in inner city schools. 0 kids in Baltimore could pass the reading comprehension test at a 10th grade level. Not zero kids in one school, or like percentage 0.1. Zero students could read. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. Illiteracy.
It really is bad. And do you know what I think about? We're going to come back to old Elon in just a second. What I think Donald Trump is doing right now, he is striking terror into the hearts of politicians all over the world, all over the Western world, certainly here and certainly in America, because he's gone in and say, I'll tell you what we're going to do, we're going to run this country like a proper business, and no more of this political indulgence, this nonsense that Caroline Levitt, we just heard talking about, $2 million for sex changes in Guatemala, $50 million worth of condoms to Gaza. No more of that. We're going to run this efficiently. And politicians, I think, in Washington especially, but around the world, are going, this is what we've always dreaded. Someone who comes in and acts with common sense. We're all going to have to do it now.
Yeah, well, it points to an interesting situation. I always say, in kind of tongue in cheek, that Donald Trump is the last American aristocrat in some ways of how he carries himself, in some ways of just how he is. But when you have people who are actually, I don't want to say rich people, but people who are independently successful, like he points to Elon, says, I want a successful guy running Doge, not an unsuccessful guy. Well, Donald Trump is also a successful guy. You know what these guys are also not able to do? You can't buy them. You can't buy them for $1 million to their charity. You can't buy them for a $50,000 campaign contribution. So these people are actually, in this case, the only uncorruptible people in the U.S. government, because they have more money than most of the people trying to bribe them. So I'm not advocating to have your country run by the wealthiest people in the world, but in a moment of, let's say, you're shining the flashlight and the cockroaches are scattering, you need somebody who the cockroaches can't pay off to turn off the light. And none of those guys are corruptible in this situation. And I think that's what's really going to, be a lesson to the world. Like, you need to elect people who are maybe not the richest guys, but the most qualified guys. And those people who have honor, who have dignity, and who aren't going to sell out their neighbor for Marriott status and free airfare and a trip to Istanbul or whatever people are doing in the U.S. government. And I think that's the big lesson. You get actually competent, successful people who aren't corruptible, and all of a sudden all the other grifters are like, oh no, we're caught because we have our hands in the cookie jar, and these guys don't even need any cookies. Yeah, and so I think that's what this is teaching us, and I think it's great to see.
Yeah, I mean, I've got no problem with billionaires being given these top jobs, because these are people who are successful. They know how to be successful. So the only people who complain about that kind of appointment are people who just sort of viscerally hate rich people. We have a lot of them in this country, as you probably noticed. Last point that I think is very interesting, that Elon Musk was wearing in his weird Elmer Fudd outfit, standing next to the president with his 4-year-old kid. He's nothing if not different, old Elon. But very interesting point. They've obviously they're driving a truck right now through the education department, but they've already driven a truck through USAID. the Foreign Aid Department. I believe that America was giving away more than $200 billion a year, vast amounts of money. And I don't think for a second that President Trump intends not to give any money away at all. He just might save the odd buck or two on condoms in Gaza, some of these crazy giveaways that they've been indulging in. But Elon made this point about USAID as they drove that truck through. He said, we're kind of interested that so many of these unelected bureaucrats, these are the executives who run the Foreign Aid Department, who the most well-paid of whom is on a few $100,000 a year. So most of them are $100,000, $200,000 a year. Nice enough money. He said, but we're kind of mystified to find how many of them seem to live in multi-million-dollar houses and have somehow accrued multi-million-dollar fortunes. That's interesting, isn't it?
It's more than interesting, especially with USAID. I mean, it's nearly $1 billion a day that they're giving out, which they can say is a drop in the bucket compared to the trillions of dollars GDP. No, that's a lot of money. And there's a lot of influence you can buy around the world for $1 billion, and a lot of maybe regime change and things you can get yourselves involved into. Then you look at the director, Samantha Powers, or whatever her last name is. She makes, like you said, a couple $100,000 a year. In the last 5 to 6 years, her net worth has ballooned to $30 million. 30 million.
Is that what they mean by USAID? Who exactly is benefiting from USAID?
USAIDing herself. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, these people are craven grifters, and they know that the jig is up, and they're trying to lock the doors and batten down the hatchets. But America has turned on them. The American people have turned on them and realized you people are we go to work, we work hard, we come home, we buy our groceries, our gas, our food, our electric, and we pay our taxes, and we turn around and you're stuffing your pockets and you're sending money to Mozambique for transsexual drag shows, and eventually people caught on that the wind it's too much now. The grift is too exposed, and all of these corrupt people have been taking kickbacks because that's what it is. These contracts are perpetual contracts. How do you get a perpetual contract? You're kicking it back, not directly, through a paymaster. It goes to a law office, and you get paid as a consultant. These people aren't stupid. That's how they move money all around. But the idea that it's not a kickback is what they're going to catch. These people have been robbing the American taxpayer blind, and finally the majority of Americans are on our side, and they want us to find that abuse, root it out. And if there's some extreme examples, such as the director of USAID who's taken so much money, perhaps in that case, there should be criminal prosecution. I'm not saying for everybody, but some of these egregious situations are borderline theft of the American taxpayer dollar.
Well, we don't know the actual circumstances, but as you quite rightly say, the lady in charge of USAID and the other executives who seem to somehow or other mysteriously accrued multi-million-dollar fortunes, it should be looked into, that's for damn sure. Fascinating stuff. Our thanks to Donald Trump. He's putting on the greatest show on earth. We are loving it on this side of the Atlantic, not with a little amount of jealousy. Last question, Erol, when are you coming back then?
So end of early next month, at some point, middle of the month. The doctor said 60 days at least. Don't get on a plane. You're going to be in seatbelt. You're going to get turbulence, and it's going to hit it's a ton of bruising, man, like the whole right side of my body internally.
Well, I'm glad you're getting better. And the moment you get back, I'll buy you a pint of warm, flat beer. How's that?
I appreciate it. I've been missing it.
Well, glad you have. I hate it. Good to talk to you, Erol. Take care now. Erol Morkoç there from the Republican Overseas Organization. And as you noted, he is overseas. The poor guy had a car crash over Christmas, I think it was, and has been stuck. I mean, it's not bad that he's stuck in America, but he lives here, so he's been trying to get back and can't. But we'll be back soon. Anyway.